Okay, the sixth two-key cup has just finished, and the finals were really interesting. It was a really close turn-based game. So we are going to break that down for you. I'm joined today by the winner of that finals game, who is our newest two-key cup champion, Thomas L97. Congrats, Thomas. How are you feeling?
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Feel really good. Really close games indeed. So yeah, a lot of fun to go over them.
Awesome. Well, quick note for anyone new to this: the Two Key Cup it's a 16-player single elimination tournament where the 16 highest rated players who registered qualify. So the first round is just four-player games of Terra Mystica, taking place on Board Game Arena. And then the winner of each of those games goes to a finals game, which is winner takes all. Um, so you made it through a pretty stacked first round and to the finals game, which is what we're going to focus on here. But first, I wanted to show this is the field of players who qualified for the tournament. There ended up being one switch later. I hope I don't get their username wrong. Novelty Sock ended up playing as well in the first round. But otherwise, this is the field here, and it ended up being a really high-rated field, as the last couple have been as well. So ended up with some really, really quality games here. Let me try to switch over to this. So this was your first round game. You played Witches. This was the game you won to get you to the finals. So yeah, you had a two-town Witches game where, if I remember correctly, you had kind of a slow start, or maybe it was all part of the plan. I don't know, but you had sort of a round one that wasn't terribly explosive, but you ended up going into the last round with a ton of resources, got a ton of points. What stuck out to you about this game? What do you remember about this game?
Yeah, I think like you said, I didn't build much the first round. I didn't get any leech. And the second round, I also didn't build a lot. So a little bit more of a slow start, but I was able to be relatively efficient through those first rounds. And then all my opponents, I remember building a sanctuary round two, which was a big building round, which the big building scroll wasn't in the game. So normally I'm not too much a fan of doing that. Um, but I think in this case it paid out for me because the Earth One's favorite tile was left over for round three for me to grab, and all my greens were still there. And I think if that's the case, then yeah, you're gonna have a pretty strong round or a strong
Nice.
game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I see. Yeah, it looks like you started with Fire 1, but then you managed to secure Earth 1 and Water 1. And yeah, you ended with both your big buildings on the board. So that's a lot of resources you save there, right?
Yeah, just I think in general played quite efficient throughout the entire game. Um, I think so. Looking a little bit at the competition, it was quite a close game in the end. I think
Yeah, I see the score is
Alchemist.
over on the right side here for anyone
Yeah, I
looking.
think
Yeah.
Alchemist they had like this crazy game where they had four towns, like 16 structures, but then they paid, I think, something like 50 or 60 points to coins, like
Wow.
something
Yeah.
crazy. And I also remember like doing two expensive TPs, like all paying points for them in the first couple of rounds. So in the
Oof.
end, that just wasn't wasn't enough for them. And also Swarmlings getting quite close in the end just by doing stuff they normally do. So
Yep.
um, yeah, I think I got a couple of lucky ones. So like the Earth One pool, I already recalled. Also Water One, something similar happened. Like in round five, I was able to grab that. And then in the end, I was just really afraid of losing my second town on the right there in the east.
Oh,
In
okay.
round
Yeah, with
six,
Alchemists right there.
yeah, they had the opportunity to take it from me, and in that case, I just straight up lose. I think so. Yeah, I got a couple of lucky bits, but yeah, in general, just played quite efficient and was enough for the win in the end.
Nice. Yeah, really, I think really interesting sort of, I don't know what to call it, archetype of game. Because like you said, nothing flashy. Not a flashy start. You didn't come out with a stronghold and 8 dwellings by round 2. Nothing crazy like that. You're just efficient all the way through. And what ended up being a pretty high score. I mean, 167, definitely on the higher end of scores you tend to see for your average game. And you kind of just scored all around the board. You upgraded digs in the last round. I think that was in the last round, right?
Yeah, I think 2 dig upgrades in the last round, also to do the digs. They're quite efficient.
I love
Yeah, I
it. I
think
love upgrading digs in round 6, particularly if it helps you carve out a town like you did, particularly if you're witches for another 5 points for that town. So yeah.
yeah, it's like a 9 point down, which is quite good also to get in like round 6, and then 5 points additionally, of course. And
Right.
also it was a dwelling round, and I think I built like 3 or maybe even 4 dwellings in that last round, and it always also helps, of course. So
And
and
you're
I
on the
got the
dwelling bonus tile too.
yeah,
I just
like
noticed
what
that.
what a
Yeah.
round.
Yeah. No, it's pretty incredible. So,
I think I'm not sure, but I think round 5 ending was like 83 points. So then you're only half of your
oh
final
wow.
score. So
Wow, that's pretty extreme. Cool. Well, yeah, it's a very cool game. It ended up being a pretty close one. Yeah, I guess third and fourth place, lagging a little bit behind, but all pretty close. All nice games. And like I said, Stormwinds came within spitting distance of catching you as well. So awesome. Anything else you want to say about this game before we move on to the review the finals?
no, don't think so. I think we can move on to the final game,
All right,
which
let
is
me.
also really close and really exciting, I think.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, I think I might have said this at the beginning of the video, but anyone watching, these were run as turn-based games. So you can see the first game. Let's go back here to the final score. Was about a little over 2 weeks. Second game was actually really fast for a turn-based game, but it was still played over the course of 6 days with these players. And so this was the final score. Spoilers, but obviously game's already finished. We already know that Thomas won here. So final score really close, even top to bottom. I mean, within 9 points. And yeah, so let's get into it. And also just highlighting, I mean, all these players are ranked within the top 20 or so, top 10, top 20 during the final game. So, really, really high level play, which is why it's such a treat to get to review these kind of games.
Yeah, and I
Okay,
think everyone was just very excited to be in the finals and just play whenever whenever they could.
definitely.
So
Yeah.
that's probably why it went so fast. And also, I think apart from me, an All-American final, so it was something to.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah, I hadn't noticed that. And you're like 4 hours ahead of East Coast US, something like that,
Yeah,
right?
so
You're...
usually it was then by the end of my day, they still did a couple of moves, and then next morning I saw what the last move was the day before. So
Okay, so you always got the first move of the day, but yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't even notice that. That makes sense. The time zones definitely help speed things along. Yeah, I ended up watching following this game, much like I did with I think the last turn-based finals. I followed it much more closely than I expected to. It was such an interesting game. So yeah. Okay, so you were in what, third seat going into the game? So engineers get put in first seat, swarmlings in second seat. You put fakirs in. And then Melson had the option to make kind of a friendly color wheel or a little bit of a more aggressive color wheel, and Melson puts in giants, which means that giants are the sandwich faction here, with swarmlings kind of on the opposite side of the color wheel. So, yeah, do you want to tell everyone? Yeah, let's talk about what the setup looks like a little bit. Did anything pop out at you going into this game? You put fakirs in. Did you think that they had a good game plan? What were you seeing when you started the game here?
yeah, I didn't think too much about the Fakir's pool. I think always like when you're in fourth, you have some sort of influence on what will happen. But yeah, normally I just put something in. Some some success with Fakirs recently, so that I just put them in. And also I noticed there's no like ship scoring and no temp ship, so I thought, oh, Fakirs might be okay, but also there's no priest, and it's obviously quite bad for them. So in
Right.
the end, I don't think they're not particularly good in this setup. But Yeah, so something to notice, indeed, you have the color sandwich, so maybe get to the colors first. But it is a little bit of a atypical one, I think, because the faction that's actually sandwiched is giants, so they don't really are bothered by that too much because they can do their stronghold ability, of course. And then also the two uh, factions that are besides them are not hurt too much because it's still a double dig for them, for giants to actually dig their hexes. And then swarmlings, normally it's good to be on the opposite side because you still have like a lot of leftover hexes usually. But they also don't necessarily want to build a lot of structures, and they can also like upgrade digs to get some space usually. So I think that didn't really influence my decision making too much
Okay.
in sort of scoring it.
So yeah,
Um,
whereas normally you would look at a sandwich with the opposite faction and have that influence how much you bid pretty seriously. You almost disregarded it in this situation. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I think the most important thing is what will happen to your natural hexes.
Right.
So sometimes a color sandwich doesn't have to be that bad, depending on like the situation. In this case, I thought like in this case I became red, so then I looked at it a little bit more, what will happen, and then I think yeah, might be okay that none of my hexes actually get taken.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and that's a really interesting example of where the color, yeah, a game where the color wheel doesn't matter as much. Like you said, particularly because of the way that giants and swarmlings play. So let
Yeah.
me click through here so we can see the faction assignments and the values. I found that replays are always a little strange with fast auction. It takes
Yeah, I think if
some
somebody
clicking.
resets sort of their guess, then it takes more clicks to get through it somehow.
That makes sense. Oh, and I just
Um,
somehow changed the display. Okay, but so we should look at the bonus tiles and scoring track too. I remember
yeah,
looking at this game and thinking it did look pretty nice for giants. You know, you're going to start with your strongholds. Town round two is usually possible for them, and onwards from there. So you got giants for 40 VP. Fakirs were the next highest with 37. So Melison's playing Fakirs. Aloran is playing engineers for 31, and then Snoopy Boy with Swarmlings. Yeah, with the opposite, the color sandwich. Or maybe just because the setup was good for Swarmlings. Anyways, other players seem to have bid Swarmlings down a decent amount as well. So they
yeah,
do start about 20 points behind. So were you? Yeah, I'll let you talk about this for however long because the setup's such a big part of success in Terra Mystica. But were you happy to get Giants at 40? And what were you seeing for like game plan at
yeah.
this point in the game?
Yeah, I think well the way fast auction works, you're always happy to get them at the price that you bid. I mean,
Right.
mostly,
Important.
mostly. I
Yeah.
think I think the difference between what I bid on these factions and what actually ended up happening was I had Fakirs and Swarmlings both like 10 points higher, and then NGs and uh, Giants about the same.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, but that's I think that always happens also because of preferences. I normally find Swarmlings very hard to evaluate. Also
Okay.
not that good of a Swarmlings player, so I think in the end all these points that were bid made a lot of sense because it was a really close game. I think to get into the track a little bit, I think indeed it made a lot of sense for Giants and also for Swarmlings, I think, because you can do that first round stronghold, probably be able to get a second round uh, down, and then third round TP or a temple, and then sort of yeah, it looks really natural. So I thought I would be able to get some points there for Giants. Mm, Also with big building in the game and being the first one to pass, it's also very nice for them because you have the two workers that will actually get your stronghold with an additional dwelling, and then also like the additional scoring you get from that. So I think that all influenced my choosing them, and then also I think not bothering too much about the sort of the color wheel.
Yeah, right. Well, one other thing about
And
this selection of factions that I'm noticing too, just to point out, is that Swarmlings are sort of stereotypically culty faction, even down to their starting steps. They do get a starting step on each cult, and Giants, Fakirs, and Engineers all not very culty. So
yeah,
I hadn't really considered that before. As the implication is that Swarmlings can probably end the game with a lot of cult points, but also that
yeah,
some late game cult pushes by any of these other factions could end up being getting you a lot of points. So
yeah. I think that its influence. I had like basically all the cult points almost attributed to Swarmlings. I was hoping to win like one cult maybe, but I think they're going to win a lot on that. But also when Swarmlings are in, for example, Giants is normally not too good on network. And now when Swarmlings in, you can actually attribute like maybe 6, and then with Fakir's in also maybe 12
right, yeah,
network
good
points to
point.
them. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that also helps, like depending on what other factions are in, how good one faction scores compared to other factions.
yeah, makes sense.
Um, Something else that really stood out to me is sort of really tight in the amount of priests that are going to be there, because the priest scroll isn't there. You don't have temp ship in, which doesn't really help. Then I think there's like a tempo round in round 3, which also might sort of delay some of the temples that are happening.
Yeah,
So
good point. Yeah,
I did hope to sort of get some priest early game from like power to priest, and then utilize that also because you get some coins in round 3 when sending priests to the cults. So it's just a really efficient thing to do in general. But um, yeah, I wasn't really able to do that in the end, but we'll get to that.
okay, yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think that's about it for the setup.
Okay, great. So let's click through and look at starting placements now. Well, let's see. You're in fourth seed here as Giants, so you have to place both your dwellings after you see the first placements, but before you see the second placements from all the other players. So
Yeah,
engineers go in the middle, pretty standard. Swarmlings start on a really nice town spot for themselves, and fakirs end up starting with their first dwelling over next to swarmlings in the west there on D3.
yeah.
So that's before. How much did these initial placements influence your starting placements versus did you kind of have a game plan going into the game?
Yeah, well, not really. I think when I knew I got Giants, I looked into it a little bit more. I think the first placements of the other players are relatively expected. I'm also curious to see what you think. I've not had too much experience with giant placement, but I did sort of figure out what I wanted to do. So I think D4 is always going to be one of my placements, just to guarantee sort of having a neighbor. Just a nice central area that might get some leech. And then I think you have some options for the second dwelling. Um, I think you could go to the east, so go to D7 or D6. I think I did consider, because there's just a lot of reds around that area, so you just guarantee those reds are gonna be yours. Then I also considered for a short while E3, just to get the leech, but then again, there's so few reds in that area. Maybe if you get, let's see, G1, you can get to G2 and I5, but I assume Fakirs are going to be at F3, and then I just lose that G2, which is also very good for them to get. So
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah, I have not played a
didn't.
lot with the fan factions, but as far as giants and chaos magicians, my experience tells me, and what I've seen with other people playing, E3 is like very situational. I feel like it is almost always at at best risky, with a high upside, but usually it's tough to pull off. Yeah, that's my
Yeah,
sense of it. Yeah.
yeah. So it was really sort of a decision between going to the east and going to G2, and what I was considering was the placement of swarmlings. I think I thought they would either go d5 or they would go to the east, like g6 or something. And when they go to the east, then I'm able to, I think, get that d5x with a dig and then go to the east via that route. And at that point, it's just really strong for me, I think.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
did contemplate on that. And I think also when I start in the east, then probably all the red sort of hexes that are on the bottom west side are just all lost to me. So, and in this kind of game, it's more of it's all or nothing for the win, I think. So you got to take some risks sometimes to just go for it. So I decided in the end to go to G2.
Yep,
Um,
there it is. Yeah, double center. Yeah, and I'm not sure. It's hard. It's always hard for me to say what I would have done or what I would have thought of before seeing a placement in a game I'm spectating because I never like really plan on behalf of other people if I'm watching. I always kind of watch it unfold and I go, oh, that's interesting. I go, oh, I wonder what they'll do next. But
yeah.
I didn't sit down and evaluate before the game started
Hmm.
as a spectator, as an enthusiastic spectator in this instance. But as soon as you placed G2, as soon as I saw the opening placements, I think that was hugely consequential for not just your game, but for the whole game, because it really did squeeze the whole board. So you see Fakirs go F3, and then as Swarmlings, they could go G6 here, but what they end up doing, because that's really nice town territory, G6, G5, H7, I10, or they go north up to E11 with a double dig and single dig up. Like that, it is nice town territory. But what they end up doing is taking just as almost basically just as good town territory here in the south, but with the benefit of squeezing engineers. So because you're in the center, I think they squeeze engineers in the center as well. And then engineers end up going F1, which is a really sort of non-traditional placement. So we'll see how that plays out for them. But I thought that you placing doubly in the center here kind of opened things up for the opportunity for Swarmlings to kind of squeeze the board as well, which made for a really interesting, really tight game. So I don't know if any of that if that makes sense on your end too, or if you have insights as somebody who's
Yeah,
actually
I
played the
think
game.
I didn't expect Swarmlings. I've H4, so it wasn't like a sort of master play drawing them in.
Totally, totally.
um, I think it's very beneficial for my game that they placed there. I think there was also something in the chat like engineers also expected them actually to go D5 maybe, and therefore
D5.
may
Okay.
yes
Oh,
D5 so
D5.
in the
Got it.
center,
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
and therefore I think just don't liking giants as much because they have that opportunity.
Got it. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it just helps me a lot, I think. And I think at this point, because also to talk about that Engie's placement on F1, also that one, not seen that too often, and definitely not seen it being very successful a lot. So it is really tight for them also. I think like the craze in the north they're not gonna get, and getting to the east can be really tricky for them now with like all the hexes around them that could be taken really quickly. So um, yeah, I have to say at this point with these placements, I was not too I was quite happy with that actually.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see
uh,
that. And I mean, also, your I feel like first Giants town location D4 is a pretty standard opening. Like, oh, I don't know what percentage of successful Giants games start there, but I imagine a pretty significant number. It's a really nice first upgrade in a lot of cases because you're going to get a lot of power back, but it also tends to make for a easier town, an easier early town to kind of jumpstart your economy. So we'll see which route you end up going, but having D4 be the dwelling you're upgrading, G2 is still in the middle there, getting power from people who are upgrading around you or digging towards you there too. So I think it was really nice from that perspective as well. I guess I shouldn't talk too much about it before we watch the first round unfold, but I see that as another main benefit of the G2 placement.
yeah,
So you start on the big building tile like you talked about. Fakirs jump on the spade tile, which they can obviously use better than giants can, so that makes perfect sense. Swarmlings start on worker power, so those are all pretty expected. And then engineers, without too much of an inspiring first pick here, end up going for the 4 coins and the cult step. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll just start clicking through and let me know when you want me to stop, I guess. Let me know if you have some thoughts.
Yeah.
Engineers take the single spade action right away to make sure they secure their spades. And
Yeah.
they go directly to F2 to claim that. I assume this is partly because they want to make sure they get to G1 pretty quickly, but
Yeah, I didn't actually know what the intention was. I think it's just a dig, maybe getting priority on E3 in some lines, just above
yep,
Fakir's,
I can see that.
probably.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay, so they start off with a dig. Swarmlings choose to upgrade where they have a neighbor, which makes perfect sense. And then
Yeah.
Fakirs immediately snap the priest power action, which was possible because Swarmlings
Yeah.
upgraded next to
Which is annoying because that's what I wanted to do.
them.
Uh,
Okay.
uh,
You
two
were
two
thinking you wanted to throw priest to fire or upgrade Shika?
yeah, definitely. I think definitely priest to fire.
Yeah, that looks
Um,
pretty
I
nice.
think I think really there's not a lot of priest in the game, so I was hoping that would sort of allow me to then later on just take fire cult, which would be good. Also to take some points away from swarmlings, just having a clean sweep.
Right.
Also, like the doubling up in round 3 with the 2 extra additional coins is really good. And something additionally, so the Fakirs they took the Dick Scroll, and I was actually hoping to get in the second round a town on the center sort of continent with C3, D5, and E8, so that I wouldn't need any bridges.
Oh, interesting. So you were thinking
And
about doing more than one dig per round for the first 2 rounds.
yeah, I was hoping to get a double dick in the first. Yeah. Oh well, that doesn't really add up. Maybe I thought that later actually, because when they already had the priest, but I was sort of afraid of them going to E8. But we'll get to that later, I
Okay.
think. For now, I was afraid that I was disappointed that they took the priest at
Okay.
least.
You as soon as they take the priest, you're thinking, okay, they can dig E6 and get to E8 in the first round. Now I've lost out
Yeah.
on E8, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah. Yeah.
sense. All right.
Yeah, and
Well,
I think just their game is just pretty bad when I get to uh, E8. So I think it's a good call for them to take the priest
that makes sense. Yeah.
and
Yeah, and
prioritize
it's
that.
definitely fortunate they got the fortunate but foreseeable, I think, that they got the power from Swarmlings to be able to take it. But yeah, I think that
Yeah.
that looked pretty nice. I mean, I feel like with most factions, I guess Swarmlings and Giants aside from the base factions, getting out a temple and 2 new dwellings in the first round is almost always a really strong opening. And with Fakirs, this is the way to do it, basically. So
Yeah.
you need a priest to do that flying. So you need a spade from somewhere and a priest from somewhere. This is about as efficient of a way to do that as you can get. So yeah, it definitely looks like they're going to be off to a nice start. And you upgrade D4 here. I don't know if there's anything particular beyond just getting power back, having the town set up in that space, like you were saying.
Yeah.
It's pretty typical. Engineers upgrade next to you, which is probably, yeah, I guess expected. Yeah, I guess so. I guess a lot of the first round was, I mean, really interesting. It's very tight. There's nobody at all on like the sort of
Yeah.
almost the whole eastern half of the board.
Yeah, I think that continues a little bit throughout the game, like being really tight in the middle and people giving a lot of leads to each other.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see a couple more plays here. Swarmlings get their sanctuary, their stronghold out right away. Fakirs do exactly the dig as expected, give you a little bit more power, and then you build your stronghold, which is lovely. Gets you it's a 9-point stronghold right there. And engineers choose to use their cult bump on Earth. I don't know if they were sort of delaying for any particular reason, which means that swarmlings are able to get double dig. They also delay; they choose not to build. I assume for them that's more about what tile they'll be able to pass on to. I'm guessing they want the tile that you're on,
Yeah.
if I had to guess. And then Fakirs go ahead and fly right away. So All right, so now your first, big decision of this round, other than I suppose where to upgrade, is where do you stop? So talk us through that. Where are you going to use your stronghold power here?
Yeah, so here I am a little bit sad that Gears took that B8 hex. So at this point, when they already had the priest, I was just hoping they put it to fire or something. And then also before Swarmlings did actually the double dig, maybe I was able to get a stomp on D5 and then actually do a double dig on, what
Oh,
is it?
interesting. On
On
E8,
E8.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm
because,
so bad with the hex numbers. I just put them on so we can,
oh
not
yeah,
have to
that's
describe them
perfect.
all. But it's
Otherwise,
I
I
never
wouldn't be
remember
able to do
them,
it.
and yeah, they're so small
Yeah,
to see.
I
Anyways,
think because when doing sort of all, it gets Fakirs out of it, so that's really good. But then also, I think it's really inefficient to do a bridge down. Normally, it's like 3.3 power for absolutely nothing. And that 3 power I could also just use to dig and then have an additional space that I can build on. So that was what I was considering, but yeah, doesn't really matter. So then I think I prioritize getting to the east to all the reds that are over there, and I do my stomp on D5, sort of hoping to get like a bridge to C4, and then stomp that next round and get D6, and doing my down the second round with those hexes.
right.
But really, really anxious about Fakir's digging that D6 hack.
D6, yeah, right.
X.
Because if they take that, if they really want to prioritize that round two, then that gives them easy access to B4. It certainly hurts you. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely under threat there. Yeah. Okay. So then engineers upgrade, which is another benefit of taking D5. You end up getting a little bit more power that way, and you, I think, gladly accept that, right? 3 for 4 power, usually worth it at this stage in the game.
Yeah.
But I should point out because we'll get to this, but you paid 3 points for that 4 power there. You end up getting a lot of power this game, but I think something that went really well for your game, in having watched through the whole thing, is that you didn't pay much points at all for power. So we
Well,
can check out the stats after, but that's about as much power as that's definitely the biggest leech you took, and yeah, you
yeah,
ended
I
up
think
being
in
really
this,
efficient
I
in that
think
regard.
it's really, I don't actually like paying points for power that much. I think it's just a really inefficient way of getting resources, like just a lot of points you normally pay for getting a little bit of leech.
Mhm.
So I think people generally sort of overspend points on power, which is a little bit of an unpopular opinion. But
Yeah.
I think in this game, especially next round, I do get quite a bit of power. I think we can see that in round two, but I take like a lot of power actions. But in general, I don't really like paying too much points for power. And I think in a lot of situations where other people might be inclined to take it, I decline it. So
Well, I think that's pretty great because personally, I definitely over accept power. I tend to play, and I tend to play this way in other non-Terra Mystica games too. I like to go big. I don't know what it is. It just if I see power coming in early in the game, I'm like, I'll do something with it. And then I find that, particularly if I'm playing a live game late in the game, I'll accept way too much power and then be like, oh, I just paid like 5 points for basically nothing, like paying 5 points
yeah,
for
I
one
think I
resource
think
point. That's the worst case scenario. That's what you got to
yeah,
avoid.
in a live game it's difficult because you don't really have time to analyze, but
Totally.
there should be some kind of return on the investment that you do. So if there's like really good like late round games or you want to win network, for example, that can be like a big return on that power that you're getting. But also
Definitely.
sometimes I think in some games people just accept the power and they have no idea really what they want to do with the resources to turn that into more points than they're paying, and it's just like an auto accept. And
Yep.
yeah,
Exactly. And that's the thing. There's these break points too, where it's like if at the end of the game you're going for network and it lets you get down that last dwelling, you have just enough resources for it, then it's great. But if you already had enough resources for that last dwelling and you accept it because you know you want to get out that last dwelling, you're not totally sure how many resources you need, then it's bad. And you're basically just paying points to have less points. So yeah. But okay, so we'll touch back upon that later because throughout this game, I think you get a lot of power, for a very small amount of points. But this early power did end up being pretty crucial for your round two, as you alluded to, and we will see. So, and so Fakirs choose to, I think, wisely upgrade next to your other dwelling because they've built out their dwellings early, and all their opponents have built up their temples and strongholds. So they're going to be giving as little power as possible to their opponents with this first one, and that benefits you. You end up getting some free power off of it. So
Yeah, I like the sort of the one dwelling powers. I like that a lot. I like that normally more actually than getting a lot of power and having to pay points for that. So I think
yeah,
this is just the most efficient way of getting it.
it can really add up. And if you're, I feel like for a faction like Fakirs or Giants, if you're making it to a lot of your natural hexes without large clumps of like large clusters of structures, then you end up getting more of it that way, which can be really a big deal. So you're the first one to be able to pass out of this round. You take your 3 actions and you pass
Yeah,
on to
which
a lot of
actually
coins.
it was
Yeah.
already a decision here, I think, but I was considering taking the bridge over here for
Oh, I
action two.
see. Yeah, you could have just secured it
Because
to be
I did
safe.
have the power, or I could actually do like a 7 coins for a worker action, but I really wanted that 7 coin X because yeah, it's just a lot of resources and a lot of the other tiles that other people are on don't do that much for me. So
Totally. And it looks like engineers were the only ones who were possibly ready to pass. Certainly, let's see. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, in my mind, there's no way that fakirs are skipping a temple, and there's no way that swarmlings
no,
aren't doing at least a dwelling, if not a temple. So
yeah.
I guess they don't have quite the resource. Yeah, but well, they're not done yet. So you get out of the round early. You get on your coins.
Oh,
You get a whole.
I was
Oh yeah, sorry.
considering even doing a 5 power priest to get the fire priest because I
Oh,
really like that
interesting.
actually. I now remember that.
That could
Yeah,
have been
so
really nice. Yeah.
yeah, I think even for 5 power, that priest to fire is still like because it's basically like a two worker action, which I'm gonna do anyway next round. So
Right.
uh, I did consider that, but I liked passing now for the coins better than doing that also.
Yep. Right. So yeah, that's an interesting trade-off because it's basically 5 power for 2 workers instead of 4 power for 2 workers, but it comes with more cult points later in the game, and like you said, 2 coins a
And
couple
two
rounds
coins,
from
and you
now.
get like
Yeah,
half a power back, so it's only 4.5, and then yeah, just really efficient to do that fire priest here, I think.
that's nice. Okay, but you end up deciding that 6 coins are more worth it, and you're round two. We've talked about it a little bit. We'll get there, but ends up being really efficient in as far as power actions and as far as a lot of stuff. So I feel like what you ended up doing looks really nice. That's a very nice alternative line. Then I'm just clicking through, and then we'll talk about what happened here. So Fakirs ended up. Let's see if I can get a little better view of the favorite tiles here while still being able to. Maybe not. All right. Oh, we can kind of see them. So Fakirs end up taking Fire 1, a little bit unconventional, but it ends up giving them a bonus worker in the first, going into the second round, and coins that they will end up using, certainly. And then engineers go for air 2. So that's also a little bit unconventional. I feel like engineers are more typically, or pretty often, will end up going for Earth 2 or Earth 1. So they end up
Yeah,
wanting power going into the second round and beyond. So,
yeah.
so
Also, they get that power for their second temple, so I feel like a lot of the times when they take that power, that sort of overdoes it a little bit. I think not
true.
really in this
Yeah,
game. They've
true.
been really efficient with their power, but also that Earth 2 pool could get them the sort of dig in the next round, possibly.
Right.
So yeah, but probably they had the reasons to do this. It worked quite well for them. So
And I'm remembering now that engineers did delay before they put their cult step early before deciding which favorite tile to take. So it's possible that was why they were delaying. And in bumping Earth, you got to figure that cult spade might have been on their mind as an option. So if they bump Earth now, they end up taking Earth 2, then they can maybe get to the fourth spot or beyond next round. But they ended up going for Air 2 instead. And then Swarmlings were the other faction that delayed. They dug without building. And what I'm seeing is that they landed on the spade tile for round 2, which is pretty huge for getting out of town for them. They do need to come up with a spade one way or another to get that town in most circumstances. So I think they just had enough actions to stall out fakirs. So fakirs would pass first, and swarmlings would end up on the
Yeah.
spade. So really, I think really interesting round 1 overall. A lot of some unconventional starting placements, or yeah, a couple unconventional starting placements, a couple unconventional favorite tiles, but everyone getting off to a good start. And certainly, yeah, everyone's game looking pretty nice at this point. Well, actually, how are you
Well,
feeling about Engineer's game at this point? Because this is
I
something,
was I
another
wasn't
trend
sure
throughout
if
the game.
if I needed to go break in, but I wouldn't be
Yeah,
happy like playing engineers at all at this point.
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah. And
look. I
it
mean,
sounds like Lauren
Swarmlings.
wasn't too happy either.
Yeah, I think if Swarmlings get G3, then they're sort of stuck in the middle. I think a lot of things could go wrong for them really
Yeah,
quickly. I feel
totally.
like.
Yep, yep. So, so yes, good point. Them aside, I caught myself just in time. I don't know that their game looks unconventional and interesting, and we'll see. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know if you're watching this and you remember what the final scores were. They do end up pulling off a pretty nice game, but
yeah, really
uh,
interesting.
pretty yeah. So we'll follow along with that too. But so that's round 1. You've got your town lined up. You're hoping that D6 sticks around, and you've got a lot of resources and a lot of power going into
Yeah.
first position here. So round 2 starts, and you are looking at these power actions. And what do you go for first here? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember I wanted to, yeah, sort of get D6 as soon as possible. I was really afraid of that getting taken by Fakirs. That's also what I was actually contemplating in the first round. Actually, do like a 5 power priest to get a ship upgrade and go to D6. I think, but that just was insane. Uh, I think I go for the bridge here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Yep, there it
gonna build it
goes.
anyway. It's really bad for me if somebody takes it, even though I don't think that makes a lot of sense for people. So
Right. And as it
um,
is now, you have enough. Once you get the bridge, you can make a town, right? As long as the D6 sticks around, you have the resources you need for 2
yeah,
dwellings, trading post, and you got a couple coins beyond that, even. So
yeah.
that's looking
And I
pretty
was really
nice.
considering what to do with the power, but we see that I think in the next turn I do.
Yes. So then engineers up next, and they have enough power to take the double dig, so they want to continue their expansion. They don't have any shipping yet, but it looks to me like they wanted to secure double dig, make sure no one else took it. So they build down to F4, and they dig E3 to gray before Fakirs threaten that. They're probably also worried about losing that hex, um, which means you actually just got one more power from the engineers as well.
Yeah,
And then Fakirs claim the first priest to Earth, which looks nice for them. That could help with a
yeah.
gold spade.
And that's
And
also really amazing for me, I think, because that actually means they are way less likely to take D6 because that was their
totally,
priest they could use for the flight. So really happy at that point.
you thought you had a little sigh of relief there, I imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's pretty nice. Yep. So things are looking pretty good on your end for this round, and Swarmlings just go ahead and use their spade to get their town space carved out. Looks like that's a easy town for them. And
And
now,
here is
yeah,
actually you can also see I cancel my move here. I think in the
yep,
first
yeah, yeah,
instance I
there it
wanted to
is.
take the priest again. Very few priests in the game, so I think that's just really good getting a tree spot. But then so my decision here is I can either do 2 dwellings and do a TP, and then do the temple next round, which is temple round, which gives 4 points. Like I could also just build the temple now, and then having Earth One already, building the 2 dwellings with Earth One, and also getting 4 points. So that's equal, I think. But then I get a priest next round, which could be good.
Right, and you get to
And
take if you want Earth One. Yeah,
yeah,
you
and I
you
can
know
sort
it's
of
here now. Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
that's I think I really need that. I'm gonna build a lot of dwellings, at least try to.
yeah.
So that also really plays into my mind. So
Yeah, so
I
when
think
you put it that way, that seems like a complete no-brainer. But I feel like looking at the setup, a lot of players would say, "Well, I'm getting the town now. There's a temple next round. I'll just build it then." But yeah, that
yeah,
makes, I mean,
it sort of it
literally
makes
the
sense,
same amount
but
of points. Yeah.
yeah, you have to calculate that sometimes. But also here, I think I wanted to take that priest to really prevent Fakirs from going to d6 because they
Okay,
still
you were
can
still
in
concerned,
lines.
yeah, about the
Yeah,
hard
but
dig and yeah, yeah.
yeah, but I was like, okay, if I now take the 7 coins and the workers, because I have so much power, then I can actually do that and have a lot of coins left. When in the other line, when I would do that, I just convert 1 power to 1 coin. So
Right.
yeah, I think I just now go for the workers and then go for the coins and have like infinite resources basically for for a round 2.
It looks pretty nice. It does look really nice. Yeah. Yep. And I don't know if you feel this way, but I haven't played turn based as much recently, or I think at all recently for Terra Mystica, but I had a stretch where I played a bit. I think for me at least, the paranoia, like you're talking about D6 and how Fakirs could take it. I feel like looking at the board as an outsider, Fakirs threw a priest to Earth. If they take a temple this round, they could take Earth 1 or Earth 2, get the spade. They've got resources for a temple. Temples are good for Fakirs. The the paranoia of having D6 taken, they certainly could take it. But I feel like I tend to succumb to that paranoia more easily in like high stakes turn based games, where it
Yeah,
feels
definitely.
like, where it's like, I know they probably shouldn't, but what if they did? That would be so bad for me. I don't know. Maybe
Mhm.
that's just me, but I feel like sometimes in turn-based games,
Yeah,
I can
and
really get
also
in
I
my head
think
about it.
it it depends. I think at this point I'm a little bit ahead. Maybe I think I'm in a good place, and at that point you just start to look at what could go wrong. And when you're a little
That's
bit
yeah,
more behind, then you also think like, okay, what? Maybe you make some more risky plays to get ahead a little bit. So
that's a very good point. I actually remember speaking with Zorus in a similar earlier video that's on this channel. After the first turn-based two-key cup, and he said something exactly like that. He had a cultist game that was going really well, and which ended up being close to the end, just like this one did, but looked really nice at the time, and was just looking for ways for it to go wrong, basically. So that makes perfect sense too. So, what did I just miss? Um, Dwelling,
yeah, so
right. So engineers build
yeah,
their dwelling, and then folks are sharing a little bit of power in the west there. Fakir's upgrade, so it does look like a second temple there. And Swarmlings end up taking that power. So Swarmlings end up taking the priest. At this point,
yeah,
were you still considering the priest, or you were probably just taking the coins anyways?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you take the coins. So there you have it. The big 3 power actions in round 2. Don't see that too often. That's usually a pretty good sign.
Yeah.
And now
And here I think
Fakir's.
Fakir's take Earth 1. You mentioned just about the paranoia, and I think even at this point I was afraid of missing out on Earth 1, even though it's
Yep,
next round temple round. But yeah,
totally.
I could actually lose it there if Swarmlings build a temple and
Yeah,
NGs also
Swarmlings do
build a
have
temple.
just enough for a temple, and same with engineers. Actually, they both have
Yeah,
Swarmlings, including their power, have enough for temple, and engineers, even without power,
yeah.
have enough for temple. So, yep. And Swarmlings end up upgrading, so they could take Earth One before you still, and taking the two-key town, which looks nice for them. And then you get your trading post out, and engineers end up going for second trading post rather than
Yeah, which I figured they would do because they went explicitly to like the trading post tile instead of
right.
like the big building tile, which would be a worker more. So I think that what this was their plan all along, and then build the temples in the temple round. So
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, good read. Good read. That's nice. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they just built the second trading post also doesn't cover up any worker production for them. So that
yeah.
makes perfect sense. And at this point, looking at this game, I was assuming engineers were going to play some really tall game. They were going to like get out their stronghold early with some bridges, and I don't know what I expected, but they definitely
Well,
played
I
a.
expected to Swarmlings take G3 and then NGs just start crying or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Beyond that, of course. So Fakir's pass, they'll be first next round with access to double dig. They got some coins, they got some dwelling points coming. Things look pretty nice for them. Swarmlings throw the priest to Earth, which makes plenty of sense. puts them over the threshold to get a spade, and they'll get that coin from it the next round. And now you get your Earth 1. Certainly imagine you're happy about that. And engineers
Yeah, really happy
pass.
about that. And also now having the certainty of getting that down, getting Earth 1, I think at this point I'm just like oozing with confidence,
Yeah.
still building that down, getting so many points this round. It's just, I felt really good at this point, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, by the end of this round, we'll look at the point totals, but you're going to be on the board very much in the lead. You get 2 points from that. And then, so did you have, how much do you debate what town to go for here? So you build the dwelling here. Did you sort of, yeah, how much, what were you thinking in terms of what town tile to take?
Yeah, I think I did debate it a little bit. I did debate, do I need the resources of getting the uh, actual shipping town instead of the priest town? Because I could also do a priest town and just sort of pay for the shipping, and then just that's way more efficient. But I think it, I should have enough resources for the rest of the game to build the shipping, but just not in the short term. And I want to build out some dwellings like by round 4, and then I probably need like 1 or 2 ship, which is just a lot of coins at this point. So I figured just uh, getting the shipping down now was a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it is really
And
good for giants in general.
yeah, I feel like it's a strong early town for giants in particular. Sometimes nomads, some other factions like it too. And it's
Yeah,
just a lot of resources. And giants, struggle to make priests early. And like
yeah,
you said, in this case, you really want to be sending your priests to cults early if you can get them as giants.
yeah.
So
And
it's
it's
really
just a
nice.
priest-tied game, so just a priest is worth a lot. And we didn't really talk about it, but Swarmlings actually took the single dig to get G3, so already engineers are crying at this point. But also for
Right, right.
me, connection is getting a little bit tight because Fakirs are going to get their end of round dig, and they're going to put it probably at E5 because that's their only hex they are neighboring. And
Right.
then they probably do like a dig in the first sort of, they take double dig, I think, something like that. So then actually the only hex I can actually get to connect is what is it, E4.
E4, yeah, this blue hex in
And
the middle. The
so
isthmus.
I just need shipping for round 3, and I need it quickly. So that was in the end the logical decision, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, because otherwise you're relying on the to get to 2 ship, you need the priest
Yeah,
action to stick around, or you need to do 5 power priest or something like that.
yeah.
So makes perfect
I,
sense.
it's a little bit unfortunate at this point. I don't really get a good sort of pass style, but yeah, that's sometimes just what it is when you are the last to pass.
Right.
And I
You
think
had
this is also a good point to sort of go. Here I had a sort of plan for the rest of the game already figured out what I wanted to do.
oh, okay. Yeah, talk us through that.
So at this point, I'm feeling really good. Have a lot of points, as you can see, like 59 points. I already have Earth 1. I have a good economy, so I'm looking pretty good. I'm thinking I tried to make it work to get 15 structures, but that was just a little bit too much. So I'm probably going to end up maximum 14 structures. And I think also a third town wouldn't really work, or would be just too expensive to get. So at this point, I'm thinking like I need to connect. I need to build a second town, and I need to build out all my structures, which just means get to all my reds as soon as possible. So at this point, I was like, oh, the rest of this game is not going to be this complicated anymore. I can just relax and do those things. But yeah, it turned out to be not not too much the case.
Okay, interesting. Well, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. So you end up passing on to worker power. Yep. And then and yeah, you're at 59 points. You're at least 20 points ahead of everyone else. And okay, and then as right as you expected, Fakir's dig E5 halfway. then Swarmlings have Spade too. So, but honestly, at this point, you're really far ahead. Your game's going about as well as it could have, and you started at 40 points. But sort of current points aside, I thought that Swarmlings and Fakirs both had really nice things going at this point as well. Fakirs have like just the resources they need to take E5 and to take B2 and A5. It seems like pretty natural expansion for them up there because they have two priests, so they can basically dig
Mhm.
to secure E5, fly without building, and then fly again. So they're pretty efficient on points right now, and their economy looks pretty nice. That fire one is starting to um, look nice as far as how many coins it's getting them and how well they're using those. And then Swarmling, same thing. I mean, they're already on 7 hexes. They have what they need to make a Sanctuary this round, I think. What was I looking at? They've got a lot of resources, and they're going to be able to start building towards the second town. I thought they both had really nice things going here, but again, just points on the board. You're so far ahead at this stage.
Yeah, and it's definitely true what you say, and I think I overestimated my chances at this point because, yeah, I think if you look at the final scores, then it was really close. And even for NGs, I think you could say like they're not completely out of it, so they don't have a lot of space, but they have accumulated a lot of resources. Going to build 2 temples, I think, this round. If they are able to dig out of this situation, then they're still NGs. I mean,
Exactly.
if they
Yeah.
start going, then they just
They have a
explode.
lot of explosive potential, and it's really sneaky
Uh,
because engineers' buildings are so much cheaper.
yeah.
It's kind of easy to forget, and they ended up getting on the big building tile too. So that was, I think, kind of a godsend for them here. Getting those extra workers are just so valuable, particularly when they didn't start with Earth 2. So they basically, they didn't start with Earth 2, so you could think of them as being 2 workers behind where they would have been otherwise. But with those workers on the pass tile, they've got all the workers they would have otherwise plus extra power. So, like you say, they do have enough resources to be a little dangerous here. So, and yeah, Fakirs do exactly what you'd expect. They do not want to, as much as you were afraid of them taking D6, I'm sure they were equally afraid of you taking E5. I don't know if you would have done that right away if you had the option.
Yeah, could definitely be the case. But I think they're always gonna dig that
Totally. Yeah, no
first
reason not
section.
to. Then they got out of the round plenty ahead of you, so there's not much of a threat there. And then engineers take coins here, and swarmlings take another priest, so they're sort of keep blocking that power action and getting their cult
Yeah.
game defending
It's
that.
really interesting now looking at engineers, like from knowing where they ended up, they just had enough to sort of make this round work. It's good.
It's pretty incredible, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe can I talk a little bit about this decision I made
Oh
here, like
yeah. Oh,
putting
I'm
the
so sorry. I
priest
forgot it
to
was your turn.
water?
Yep. So
Oh,
you got a
that's fine.
priest in hand. You threw it to water. I spoiled that,
Yeah,
but go ahead. Yeah. What were you thinking with that?
because as I mentioned, I was like, oh, the rest of the game is going to be more easy. And then already this decision took me like ages to make. I was considering 2 things. I was either going to pass first and then pass for the coins, which are really good, or I'm gonna do 1 action more. So that means building 2 dwellings and doing something with the priest, and then pass behind fakirs for their dwelling scroll.
Okay.
That's what I'm considering, those 2. But then also, what am I gonna do with the priest? I could either send it to water, or I could do some shipping upgrades and get to I4 this round. Stomp it this round, basically.
I4. I see.
For the, or sorry, for E4,
E4. Right. Yeah. Okay. That
the
makes more sense to secure your
connection.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah. And I decided that I didn't really need the additional resources that's much of the coins, so it would be better to pass behind the fakirs for um, the dwellings. And I decided to go for the water priest, the tree step, because it just gives me 2 more coins this round, and then also it gives me uh, just 1 step more on water, basically.
Right.
But but that requires me to then do the dig on B3 and A5 because I don't have um, that additional shipping,
Right.
and I do need to do 2 more actions, and I want to do my stomp anyway, and then build the build the town on the top basically, because after this round I have three more stumps.
Okay, so you were thinking you'd
Uh,
dig across A7, A8, something like that?
yeah,
Okay, got it.
yeah, and I would be more flexible if I did actually the E4 dig this round. So I do shipping upgrade and then E4, because that's sort of my connection stump, and then I have three stumps to make the town work, and that sort of bites me in the ass a little bit
Okay, all right, we'll
later.
see. Okay, so you end up putting the priest to water, and you're very much aware of how many actions fakirs have left, and that you want to get onto their tile. And so here they go. They're flying north there, as expected. And engineers claim, I'm guessing Earth 1 here. Yep, they take Earth 1. And Swarmlings throw their priest to air cult. So here you go. You stomp on B3. So you're saying when you went north on this action in this round, you're thinking mostly about getting the town. That was your main motivation to go north there.
Yeah,
You're thinking
yeah,
that's just your primary town space. But it does have the added
yeah,
benefit of getting power from fakirs here too.
yeah, and getting one more power, but also I sort of I claim that A6 hex then this round,
Right.
and because I want to take one more action building the dwelling, but then um, yeah, because otherwise I was afraid of Fakir's digging that A6 hex away from me.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And it effectively takes a town away from them because I think if you don't take A6, they probably do end up with a town in the north there.
yeah, and that's why I wasn't too fond of Fakir's, because their town sort of to the west didn't work. On the north, it's not gonna work. And they have that town in the middle, but it's just really expensive building a sanctuary without big building around, I think. So
Yeah, totally. So engineers end up securing Earth 1, Water 1. Swarmlings take Air 1 first, which is interesting. They, yeah, yeah, I would normally think Water 1 for them.
yeah,
I
and I
haven't,
think they're gonna do that now,
they
so
just
I'm
do
not
that
sure
next.
what the
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, you know what? The Air 1 does bump them over to get 2 power, so maybe they're going to need that
Yeah,
power. Yeah, and I think
probably.
that might be what it is. So if they're building a sanctuary next,
Yeah.
that's 5 and 8, so they end up probably doing one worker conversion to keep their power. We'll see. But that's an interesting little move
Yeah,
there.
that's what it is, I think. I think at the moment I also realized like, oh yeah, they're getting that power. And at this point I didn't consider this. That was a little bit stupid of me. I assumed Fakirs would go for the 7 coin town, but also the dig scroll is 7 coin scroll. 7 coin scroll, but actually the dig scroll is available, and that makes it really easy for them to get to A7.
Oh, I see. Yep. Yep.
Which I was a little bit afraid of, but I thought like, yeah, they don't have enough for a dig first action, so I can actually claim that free unless they do like a worker dig. But yeah, that's not the case. I missed that a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense. But it does give you the opportunity of being able to pass on to coins if you want to as well. Oh no, but you're taking the dwelling tile either way.
Yeah,
Yep, I see. I see. Okay, so yeah, that all makes sense. And then engineers put their priests to fire here to get some extra resources, fight some cults. And yeah, and then Swarmlings end up going for 2 temples instead of Sanctuary early on, which is interesting. I thought that was kind of nice, nice little move on their part, getting 2 temples out this round, scoring the extra points, getting the extra priest production. Yeah, interesting.
yeah. Sanctuary is also an additional priest for them, but
Oh, right. So I guess it's the same either way, but yep. And then you pass on to dwellings as planned. So you'll be scoring a lot of dwellings next round. And yeah, that big building bonus tile you were on in the first round, and it continues to evade you for a lot of the game, as we'll see. But and then yep, and then swarmlings are left in the round on their own. They've got some nice bonus tiles to pass on to, and they bump air so that they are already in place to get their 1 priest next round and their 2 spades the following round. So that looks pretty nice for them. And what do? They pass and land on the big building tile. And we're on to the next round. So at this point, more than halfway through the game, you you were thinking your plan was a little straightforward, but already your northern town is looking threatened, and indeed, first action, Fakir secure A7, which makes plenty
Yeah.
of sense. So now, what are you thinking at this point? How much are you feeling you have to pivot? What are your priorities?
Yeah. So I have 3 stomps left, and then you try to decide, okay, what can I do with the 3 stomps? One of them is required for connection on E4, and then 2 of them are left for the town. So that's already stretching it a little bit because I can't connect existing reds, basically, maybe in the south, but maybe I need to go to the northeast, like connecting A9 and A12.
Yep, right.
But
That would be
that's
4.
also in risk of Fakirs taking A9. So I did.
And you could be in trouble with neighbors up there too. You might end up having a
Yeah,
really
that
expensive
ends
trading
up. Yeah,
post. Yeah.
that is what ends up happening a little bit. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about Water One a lot at this point. I was already considering it. It's a battle between me and the Fakirs, and I was afraid that they were going to do that first round, but they did this, which then allows me actually to get priority on that on them. Uh, which I did calculate a little bit. Like I have like a lot of resources at this point, and I'm not gonna get to 15 structures. So even sort of, I don't have enough space for that. So I think at this point it is worth it to build a sanctuary for water one, which I'm also end up doing here next
Okay. Yeah. So
action. I think it's just 12 points for me with 4 TPs left to build.
right. Yeah, it makes
And I
perfect
still have enough
sense.
for like doing 4 dwellings this round. So or 3 remaining dwellings, which is good in a dwelling round with the dwelling pass style. So
I see. Okay, got it. So you have enough resources, and Water One is enough priority, and it does. It basically effectively takes those 12 points away from Fakirs. They're able to find some of those points with an Air One or
yeah,
something else, but it definitely does
yeah.
swing points directly against that opponent who's looking pretty
It was
nice.
either between this and doing the 7 coins action, which
Okay,
would give me basically 3 free coins, and then hoping that Fakirs wouldn't take it after me. But I decided to prioritize Water One because I don't think I needed 3 additional coins
right.
throughout the
Yep.
rest of the game.
And it also comes with an extra priest too,
Yeah,
from that
which was
cohort.
actually quite important. Actually, I did consider that. Yeah,
Yep.
that's good that you pointed out.
Yeah, so it looks nice. So you're very I was very impressed by this. You're very aware of how many coins, just how many resources you need and how many structures and how many hexes. You really do have it all planned out here, which is I think a large part of what enabled you to win this game.
Yeah, which is
Looking
not
at
something you want to do every game, I think, but
certainly.
because
No,
it's
but
just
well,
so much calculation. But
and it does depend too. I feel like with a faction, in my mind, a faction like Fakirs or Giants, um, it's a little bit easier. I think you usually have fewer actions with giants. Your spades are really sort of a limited resources that you can more plan around. Although,
yeah,
as we'll see, sometimes you can end up with an extra spade, an extra dig that you don't expect,
yeah,
or that you weren't counting on. But yeah, but I mean, just looking at your resources, certainly power can be coins, and often is coins. But you from this point on in the game, to me, just eyeballing it, I'm like, ooh, Giants are a little bit short on coins. Ooh, Giants are still a little bit short on coins. But it seems like you were very aware and the whole like you know exactly how many resources you need for this round. You know what you're building, so you're. I think that it seems to me that allowed you to play really efficiently and not do things like take leech you don't need,
yeah,
which is great. It's really important. So it turns out that Swarmling snag the coins action. So
yeah.
no coins power action for you this round.
And looking
And
at that, I think they're very efficient this game. Like now getting 7 coins in the third place, getting like a big building pass
yep,
scroll. I think, yeah, I understand why
definitely.
they got this good of a game. I think when watching it back.
Yeah, they looked really good to me all game too, but their points were always lagging a little bit, and they
Yeah,
started 20 points behind.
and
It's
you
tough.
know what it is? I think at some point, engineers did like so they built the TP and the temple on E3, and also Fakirs built that temple, and they took all that leech. So they took a lot of power, and that cost them just a lot of points. But they were really sort of explosive with the resources with that. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Yep, yep. Okay, so then let me just check something real quick. Where are we at? 109. Okay. So then what happens next here? So then you advance shipping. Right. So you're angling to use that dig on E4 as soon as possible here. And it should be pointed out, engineers can threaten that if they decide they really want to block your connection and build out
Yeah.
a town without a sanctuary or a bridge. They have the ability to do that. How afraid of that were you at this point?
I think if you at that point, if you look at their first action, that is not a priority for them. And I think looking at their first action, you already know sort of what they're gonna try to do.
Okay.
They have just enough for like 3 ship upgrades, and then digging their way out of that miserable place in the center.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I already assumed at this point that that was what they were aiming for. I was
That
more
makes
afraid
sense.
of actually swarmlings getting to that at some point. Like
Okay. Yeah. Just
if they
upgrade their
do
ship and
2 ship upgrades, then they are able to connect, and I think then at that point they're really scary. Like also getting network points potentially because a lot of other factions look like they're struggling, and if I'm not connecting, then maybe then they win. I think so.
okay. Got it. Okay. So yeah. So you're gonna be going right for connection here on E4. And first, engineers do upgrade shipping, just like you said. So, yeah. So, although they technically had the ability to take that hex from you, they that wasn't their priority, certainly. Right as you said, and now swarmlings are just building out some dwellings. Fakirs end up taking a priest action here, and you're up. So it must have been a little bit of a relief securing that hex.
Yeah. Yeah, I was already considering like even if I'm not connecting, I think I still get 6 points. And maybe even if NGs don't dig out of their hole, then I might even get 12 points just by building on the top east. So I
Right.
wasn't too worried about the connection. But yeah, it's just nice.
At this point in May as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now you're fully expecting your last two digs to have to be a town for you somewhere. And yeah, let's pause now because we alluded to this earlier, but engineers they have 5 structures on the board right now. So they're at 2 ship and they've got 3 temples and 2 dwellings on the board. And
That's
we're
crazy. 5 structures.
yeah, and we're partway into round 4. So this is really a master class in how to get out of a hole with engineers, I suppose, but certainly can show up just how powerful they
Yeah.
can be
And
when they.
also they're
Yeah,
only at 44 points. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a very good point. So we'll be following along there, but obviously they're going to go places here. And swarmlings they get their sanctuary, so they're going to be able to build a town this round, and go for water too. Is that what you would have expected from them in most cases?
Yeah, I'm not sure what else they should take. I think just the most gold steps and gives them the ability
Yeah,
to base a little bit. So I think that would be what I would have done.
makes a
Maybe
lot of
Fire
sense.
2
Yeah,
gives them the last down a little bit easier in some instances, but yeah,
right.
makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. And then this part from Fakir's, this one surprised me. I didn't see this coming, but it makes perfect sense. They dug themselves into the center here to give themselves easier access
Eh,
to each one. But that was what they took
yeah,
the priest for. So they took the priest and they ended up hard digging this
I
dwelling.
also didn't see this as well, but it's really aesthetically pleasing. Like,
Oh, it's
you,
beautiful. I agree. Yeah. And I think they both decline that power. Oh no, the engineers end up getting reasonable. Their power is capped, so they get 2 power from that, which is pretty good. You build out I5 down there. You're on 2 ship, and you have just enough resources for 1 more dwelling. So at this point, did you consider passing on your next action, or were you always going to try to build 1 more dwelling?
um, yeah, I think I'm always building that
Yeah, I mean,
dwelling. I think, yeah.
it looks good.
Yeah, also because I was really afraid of because NG's. Yeah, no, I think I'm always just gonna build a dwelling.
Yeah, you're thinking engineers being able to get to D7 because so engineers do finally escape. They double dig
Yeah,
G4 here. which does actually hurt Fakir's too. Fakir's otherwise did
Yeah.
have a
I was
two
quite happy with this actually
line.
because
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, NGs are not dangerous at all.
right, right.
Yeah.
You're like, great. One of my opponents who's out of it is digging away a hex from an opponent who's still in it. So
Yeah, which is always good. Like one opponent paying 2 hex or 2 digs to take away another opponent's hex, and basically
totally.
2 hexes in this instance. So
Exactly. Now Fakirs need a dig on F5 to get to this G7 hex rather than just have two free flights. Assuming they get out there, they managed to get to one of the ship towns in
yeah,
time to upgrade their range. So, which was a little dicey for them too. I mean, there's one ship town went early to you, and
yeah,
yeah, Swarmlings could have blocked it or something. But regardless, engineers break out, and we'll see them just continue to expand from here. And meanwhile, Swarmlings take a coin town, which is not always their first pick, but we'll see what they end up doing with those resources. And Fakirs get out of the round onto bonus tile that'll get them some points. So as you talked about, you end up building out D7. It's 3 points. It uses all your remaining resources. And now, if engineers do choose to build C5, you'll get some power from it as well. But engineers end up going in G1. I mean, it's just really nice how their timing lined up here, where they could explode with a lot of dwellings during a dwelling round too.
I think from now on they get so many sort of good breaks.
Yes, yeah,
Also with the passes and stuff, it's like
it's
really
a
nice.
super interesting game. But yeah, they needed some things to line up to make it happen, certainly. So yeah, at this point, your options are basically to pass on to coins or worker power. You end up taking the extra coins, which makes a lot of sense. Comes with a cult step too, which can always be valuable going into the final round. And yeah, engineers end up building out in the south here. So swarmlings are on one ship at this point. So I'm assuming they were kind of worried about swarmlings taking those hexes from them. They needed all the hexes they could get because that could be a third town for swarmlings. Swarmlings could have gone
Yeah.
H6, I10, I11, something like that. But in any case, swarmlings ended up going north instead, which might have been their plan all along. I think a third town is pretty much where they have to go from here to stay competitive. And engineers spend their last workers building out I9 and passing on to dwelling scoring, which, as you said, that's a pretty nice break for them. Swarmlings just finishing up the round. I think same thing last round. They were the last one, and they end up bumping up on the water cult, having just enough power to not burn too much of their power, take the workers action, and then pass off of the big building tile. So at this point, with the big building tile available, you're still, as we should point out, up by 10 points with plenty more coming.
Yeah.
So at this point, that big building tile is looking pretty nice for a couple of you. I'd say mostly you and Swarmlings.
Yeah.
How much is that on your mind at this point?
Well, it was basically all my strategy at this point. Now, what was on my mind is because at this point you can also sort of see where people are at, and I think it was really between me and Swarmlings at this point. It was really close, and I feel like I need to get 14 structures, and I need to get it down,
Okay.
obviously,
Yeah.
and I need to get a passing scroll. That should do it. Only the town is really problematic because I have
Yeah.
only two stumps left.
Right. So yeah. So where are
And
you looking for that right now? What options did you consider? What did you? Yeah.
well, you can do a couple of things. You can go to the south, like digging I6, doing a bridge, and then doing TPs over there, and then needing one expensive TP probably. So that's then basically the bridge and expensive TP that you're sort of sacrificing, sort of six power or 3 power and 3 coins. I think you could go to the northeast, like connecting A9 with A12.
Mhm.
It has the sort of added difficulty of Fakirs being able to take A9, but also NGs in some lines taking A12.
Right.
And also the expensive TPs. So you also spend like 6 coins on expensive TPs to get that. And then I was like, I do have more than enough workers. I was gonna do worker to coin changes anyway. I can also just use those 6 workers to do a hard dig and get my sort of. I also spend 6 resources basically on trying to get the town, and that is actually a safer way of doing it, I think. And then I was looking at digging this round E9 and then passing really quickly on the worker big building tile, because that just guarantees me the big building tile and it guarantees Swarmlings not getting it. And then just doing the hard dig next round on F5 and G5, and then building all my TPs next to NGs.
Right. Got it.
That's my plan at this point. So
Okay.
I build a TP and then I do a stomp because I don't have any dwellings at this moment on my board. So I need to build a TP first.
Right.
Then just really quick pass.
Okay. So Fakir's upgrade. You upgrade your trading post where you've got the neighbor for it. And now engineers secure their connection on I6 and
I do.
crucially they dig E9.
Yeah, so they dig E9. And that's really interesting. So that south town is now gone because they connect, and that was one of the disadvantages of that. And now I think I have the decision next turn to what do I do with my stomp, because I could actually dig F9. And also really interesting what happens now is actually Swarmlings, they do their TP action. They're built at TP with the stronghold, so their stronghold action.
Yes. Right.
And that already in my mind was like, okay, Swarmlings are gonna do a quick round because otherwise they would have taken the coins.
Yep. Totally.
So I expect them actually to be really probable to actually already pass next round or next turn. But okay, let me first go into that. So I saw that and I was like, okay, it doesn't make sense for me to already pass for it now. And also, if they go on the big building tile, I'm probably able to outweight NGs and Fakir, so I can probably get a PP scroll still. But actually, what that allows me to do when they already pass now is I have 2 priests in hand, and I can get an additional priest from power action. And then I can just plainly steal the water cult from Swarmlings, and that's a really big swing in the sort of end scoring because it's just 4 points additionally for me, but also takes away 4 points from him. So I didn't
Right.
actually mind that too much, if as long as I'm able to do that.
That's smart and that's very patient. Like I feel like this is kind of like that temple decision we were talking through earlier. The way you're talking about it, that big building scroll comes with a bunch of resources. It's 8 points. You think your biggest competitor is about to pass for it, but I feel like I'm impressed. It's very zen of you to say, well, yeah, then I can just swing this cult against them. That's basically 8 points too, you know. And if you still end up with a bonus tile, you still will end up with probably 6, 7, 8 points at the end of the game as well. So. Okay, so
Yeah.
that ended up actually kind of working out better for you than if you had.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's hard to say, but
Yeah, it worked fine. And then I think the other decision is what I'm doing right now is what do I do with my stomp? Do I go
right. Once again, I got a little
E9?
trigger happy. Sorry for the click
Oh
there.
no, that's fine. It's just fine to talk about it. What I'm afraid of, I think at this point I still need my 14 structure because I think Fakirs are gonna get to 14, and I also assume the NGs were gonna get to 14, maybe even 15, but I do think I do need that last dwelling. And I was afraid if NGs get to C5, then they get their cult spade probably by the end of the round and then pick A12 away from me.
Oh, I
So
see.
I
Okay. Okay.
so I didn't want that to happen, and this way I can still dig E10 and F7 and get the neighbors there because NGs are going to build next to me. So
Okay.
getting
Got
the
it. So this,
TPs.
yeah, yeah, nice. So this
So that was
defends
the
your
idea.
natural red, and it creates a natural town space for you.
Yeah, but
That's
it was the
nice.
wrong decision, I think,
Oh,
but we're
really?
going to
Okay.
get to that later.
Okay. All right. Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounds clever to me. It shows what I know. But
I
and
also felt really clever at when I did it, but
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so engineers take that. They were probably, I don't know if they were maybe salty you took C5 from them or relieved you didn't take E9, but
I
in any
think probably
case,
the second.
yeah. Either way, at this point, it's sort of looking like you guys can kind of both help each other out in the north and that side rather than getting in each other's way. So that's at least nice. And then yeah, so swarm lanes do instantly pass. So they ended up having a one turn round here, which I'm always fascinated by. I think your Witch's game in the first round of this tournament. We talked about it a little bit, but it's so interesting to me when towards the end of the game in particular, you can have such a short round without losing steam because the tempo becomes so important and the power actions are so valuable. It's definitely one of the things that I think is most interesting strategically and tactically about Terra
Yeah,
Mystica.
I think
So,
I think at this point, when you already have all your structures on the board, or a lot of structures, then it's basically changing a dwelling for a TP maybe as being an additional action, and then it only gives you like one or two resources more.
right,
So it could be way more important to get a good scroll at that point, or just yeah,
totally. But it always makes the end games very interesting. It's such. I think it's beautiful game design, but I could talk about that for days. So we won't go there. But this is why we're here. We do love this game. So Fakir is obviously angling for their town. They upgrade a sanctuary in the middle. They're looking like they'll just have the one town this game, and they take Air One for all the scoring they can get. And now, oh, I clicked something. So, yep. So then you do just what you said. You throw a priest to water here. And yeah, it looks like the priest action's totally safe, so you don't have to rush that. Engineers just building out their trading posts and dwellings, and we talked about it, but just last round, at the beginning of the round, they had 5 structures on the board. Look at them now. It's crazy.
beautiful faction, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they have such a high upside. And so here you end up declining power on E6. And this is another one of those things where, my instinct in these situations sometimes is, well, look at all of these workers and then look, you don't have any coins on hand. You're obviously going to want power to get out your structures, but
Yeah,
you count it out and you realize, you have what you need, right?
yeah. And I think a little bit later it could actually be useful to have it, but we come in that later, I think. But
Okay.
yeah, also with giants, you know how many structures you're gonna get out. I think at this point it's just building 3 TPs and 3 dwellings, and
Right.
I should have enough to get that.
So Fakirs take their +1 range town, which must be a relief for them. No one took that from them. And you keep going up the Earth cult. And yeah, really, not many towns this game. Swarmling's looking like they're going to have 3 towns, but so far you're the only other one. You and now Fakir is the only one who have taken towns.
Yeah.
Engineers go priest to fire to fight there. They decide they have enough workers. They don't need to convert priests just yet. You close out water. So look at that total dominance on the water cult. You send 4 priests to cult at this point in the game, and they're all just to close out water. That's beautiful. And engineers spend what is basically the last of their resources building out a dwelling. So they're up from 5 structures to having only 5 left on their board, just like that.
Yeah. And I think it was at this point, I think after Fakir's test, that I got a little bit worried about Fakirs.
About
Because
engineers.
sorry, about engineers,
Yep.
because I suddenly realized that they have actually a second town. So not only the town in the west, but they can actually, with their dicks, just build a town in the east also. And then I decided that they actually have. I think at this point, I just got me, Swarmlings, and engineers all at 152, like that, that even. So
Oh wow.
that,
Okay, that is close.
yeah, and it was sort of worrying a little bit.
And furthermore, so Fakirs pass out of the round, and they don't get a bonus tile. They don't get like a
Yeah.
VP pass tile here. So I was thinking that at this point, like if Fakirs can get onto the dwelling scroll or something like that, then they have a real shot at it. But they don't, and that's a big miss out for them. You have the opportunity here if to pass ahead of engineers and deny them a scoring scroll in the last round. Did you
Exactly.
consider? Yeah. So this is the big decision on your end. You have to
Yeah.
decide
So this
how
is
much of a
also
threat
the
they
point.
are. Yeah.
I think I stopped playing like in the evening and decided, okay, I need to I need to sort of
Yeah.
calculate this in
Take a
the
step
morning and
away. Take your time. Yeah.
step away a little bit and look at it then. And I just did a lot of calculations. I couldn't make it work to now pass for the TP scroll and still get my town. So basically getting the hard tick that I still require.
Okay.
So
So you're
so
thinking
well,
you'd essentially hand the game to swarmlings if you pass
yes.
now. You just sort of
Okay,
block
yeah.
engineers. Yeah. Yeah.
I think if I don't get a town, I lose outright. But I think I lose to engineers if they get the town, if they get to 15 structures,
Okay.
and if they get a sort of high scoring town at this point. So I was just hoping that that wouldn't happen, and then I would be fine if I don't pass in front of them.
Got it. Okay. So you end up using your cult bump on air to end up position yourself to get some points from that cult. Engineers are plenty happy to pass to get more bonus tile points next round. And you're able to get out another trading post, so which is a good example of getting sorry, what am I saying? You're uncovering more income, and then you're just covering up a blank space with your eighth dwelling here, which is always nice at the end of the game. And you pass on to some points as well. And we are on to the final round. So yeah, engineers clearly positioning themselves to dig through for the town here. And swarmlings using some spades up in the north, hoping to get some town space up there. And swarmlings now get to start the round with a coin action. And they have a boatload of resources. So that's got to be a little bit scary as well.
Yeah, I would be scared if I were Swarmlings. If Fakirs in the last round put their priest to air, then I get a dig from like the air cult, and then they could actually just dig A1 for free. So I was considering
Right.
that actually, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they just didn't help me in that way.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Uh, okay, so you end up just kind of focusing on building out your town, and yeah, I guess what is there to say about the final round? You said you mentioned how tight it is. You're talking about you already have your plan. You know you need your town. You know which hexes it's on. At this
Yeah,
point, what are you mostly just counting and wishing?
yeah, it's counting a lot, and I think I'm looking especially at the cults.
Okay,
So I think two cults are interesting, like the air cult and the earth cult. And just what happens between me and engineers, I think.
okay, yeah. And so
I
engineers
think,
dig G6 here with a single dig action,
yeah,
and then decline to build. So they're doing some kind of stalling here. Oh, they didn't have a
yeah,
dwelling. That's why.
yeah,
Yep. Okay, so you end up putting your priest, the one priest you have in hand, you end up throwing to air here.
yeah,
Yep, makes sense. Could swing some points against engineers. Swarmlings are doing their thing. To me, it looks like they're just going to upgrade their digs, build out a town, hopefully end up with a high-scoring town, um, and maybe upgraded
yeah.
shipping as
And this was
well.
interesting to me, actually. I think Fakirs do this 2 times this round. They build a TP next to me where I get a leech for free, which
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
sure they're not required to do that at all. So it didn't really matter in the end, but
Yeah,
it
so
also didn't really
maybe
make sense to me.
right, interesting. Yeah, I wonder maybe they assumed maybe they were doing the same thing I was doing mistakenly and looking and saying, "Oh, you don't have enough coins. I don't want to give you the opportunity
Yeah.
to pay for power," uh, not realizing that you were very
Mhm.
happy to get the free power, right? Yeah, that's interesting. And then engineers with those beautiful, cheap 6 point trading posts. They claim the coin town, which I think was pretty. I think they pretty much needed the coin town to make the rest of the round work,
Yeah,
right?
I think that
Yeah.
was in sort of all the lines that I calculated. They took the coin down, and I think at this point, I think this would be a good point to talk about certain lines that could happen here because yeah, it's really really tight. I think Swarmlings are gonna build in the top west, their last town, and their points are sort of fixed. They're gonna win 3 cults, have 4 points on the water cult. They're gonna take the highest scoring town, and then they'll end up at either 150 or 152, depending on which town is left. And then I think between me and NG's, it's really interesting on the cults. I think what NG's, so what they still need is they need to build 3 dwellings and 2 TPs. So they do have the resources for that. Only they do need 1 more dig, for
Right.
which they will need workers. And they also have enough for that. But they only have enough for that if they actually convert their priest to workers.
Got it. Okay.
And that is sort of a lot of lines I'm calculating at this point, like what kind of town can NG stake and how many cult points can they get over me at this point. And that's also, I spoke briefly to Aloran after the game, and he also was like considering that a lot. What can I do to sort of get the workers I need and to get enough cult points? And well, we can't really do anything to hinder each other. So if somebody wants like a good exercise, which is really difficult, then I think there is a winning line for engineers here. You could try to find it at this point. I think
Got
because
it.
also this
Pause the
was,
video now, do some calculations, see
yeah,
if you can find
pause the
it. Yeah, yeah.
video. Yeah, if you have like and half
Couple
an
of
hour
hours to
left
spare.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if somebody fancies doing calculations for like half an hour. But no, I think at this point I only realized it at this point that this is actually like a winning line for them. I can't really do anything about, and they also didn't consider it until, well, not until the end of the game. So it just goes to show how the depth of this game that you end up with like some of the top 10 best players in the world that are spending a lot of time calculating, and even then the endless possibilities of what you're gonna do sort of aren't all discovered. So yeah,
Pretty
just beautiful
incredible.
game.
It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah. So what is that line? So that line involves them using their priests currently to cults. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think what we were considering is they built all their they built their existing dwellings and TPs, and then they can create the town. And they just take like the priest town, for example, take 1 more priest to cults, and then they have enough workers to do the dig on I-11 or I-12 or any one dig hex. But actually, then they are just a little bit shy because they don't have enough gold points then. But actually, what is the winning line is not taking the actually putting both priests to cults. So put a priest to the air track right now. That sort of gives you a couple of points over me. But then also putting a priest to the earth cult, and that gives them also a little bit of power.
Okay,
And
so they
then
would gain 3 power total.
yeah, so that is 3 power additionally, so they're at 2.5 basically. And then instead of taking the priest town actually, or taking a worker town, they could have taken the gold, the 8-point town. So taking the gold town.
Oh, I see. Then it comes with 4 power. Yeah,
And
4
then they
power.
get additional power, and with that power, they could actually take the workers action at that point and use those
Oh, I
workers
see.
to do the
Wow.
dig.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Incredible. Okay.
insane.
That's that's like just enough for wow, that's pretty incredible. And yeah, and 8 points for the town. That's how you make it work, right?
Yeah, and then they also surpass Fakirs on the Earth gold. So then suddenly they have like 4, 4, 4, and 2. They have 16, 14 gold points versus my 10, I think. So then yeah, they're
Wow.
just outright over me, I think.
That's incredible. Okay, but yeah, like you said, no one saw it as the game was going on in time to do it.
No.
So that's nuts. All right. So what happens instead? what happens here. Fakirs get enough power for the priest, so they're just flying. What are they doing? They're digging and flying, and then they're flying something like, I'm not sure what they're doing.
Yeah.
But engineers keep building out their town. You keep building out. And yeah, so interesting to see you guys building next to each other and decline power, decline power, decline power. So, oh, right. So they're on the fakirs are on the spade tile. So they got enough power for the priest, which basically just gives them 4 points for free. They fly and then they leave that alone. And you're both just building towards your towns here. You get there first, and you end up going for the priest town. And so that priest ends up going to air. Is that right?
Yeah, I think maybe only at this point found out about the cult line
Okay.
from engineers. So I was
Okay.
just really hesitant about them sending priest to air because at that point I've just lost
Right.
and they
Yeah.
didn't. So then I get the priest to air and
So it brings you from 2 to 4 points, or sorry,
yeah,
it brings you from 3 to 4 points, but brings them from 3 to 2 points. So
yeah,
and that's just what you need, right? So Fakir. So yeah, super interesting end game.
yeah. It's
And it should be
really
said, really
complicated, I think.
incredible. Oh, so
Yeah.
complicated and really incredible that engineers were even in a position to do this in the first place. You
Oh,
mentioned that some
absolutely.
things lined up with them for the bonus tiles, and that there's always some variability there. But yeah, just them being able to dig their way out and explode during round 4, it's just a pretty incredible comeback, really.
Yeah, I mean, just that shows also the quality of the table. I think the amount of creative solutions people were able to find, like that lines with engineers of getting the tree ship and then doing the double dig. And I think it was such a tough start for basically everyone, maybe except me a little bit or Swarmlings, but everyone got really high point totals in the end. So
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely amazing players at the table, I have to say.
All right. And so I'm just going to go to the end of the game here because Swarmlings are the only ones left in the round. They've got plenty to do, and then they're going to have a big 12-point pass as well. So they just play out their what I assume is their optimal sort of sequence here. They're able to upgrade shipping one more time, I think, and there they go. So yeah, pretty incredible game. And yeah, again, huge congratulations to you for being so competitive in this tournament and for end up coming out on top. Uh, was not easy, but really and really both interesting and impressive hearing you talk through your approach to turn-based play and how you're able to find these lines and yeah, even at a strong table, managed to win by was it 2 points? We'll see the scores come in here in a second.
Yeah. I think in that last round, I think I had it all over the place, like Swarmlings winning, engineers winning, me winning. I had no clue what was going on at some points. I think in the end, it's a 2 points difference between me and engineers.
Yeah, wow. 155,
Well,
153. Yeah,
it could have easily been a draw. I think everyone played amazingly. So
that's incredible.
yeah.
And if it were a draw, it would have been very, very close to the first tiebreaker is leftover resources. So I'm not even sure where that would have landed. I'm not sure I can even tell based on
Uh,
what's left. But there you
I
have it.
think then engineers win. I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow, incredible. So heck of a
Yeah.
game. Congratulations again. Yeah, so let's see. What did I have here? Yeah, a couple things I just wanted to share. Anyone who's made it this far in the video, yeah, huge thanks to you for coming on with me here to talk about it for so long. Like I said, it's super interesting seeing you, hearing how you talk about turn-based play and seeing how you thought about this game and all the advanced planning. It's really impressive, and yeah, I appreciate you coming on to chat about it. So, couple of
Yeah,
things just
the
for.
pleasure is
Sorry.
mine. I think thanks
Yeah.
for organizing this tournament and having me on. And
Of
Yeah,
course.
I always love the content. I'm hoping people are still around after a nearly 2 hour video, I think. But
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some people who will watch either way. Yeah, I think that if you're watching Terra Mystica content in general, you have to have somewhat of a attention span, I suppose. I don't know, but in any case, yeah, of course, it's my pleasure, and certainly having people enjoy the videos and having people get a lot out of being in the tournament and enjoy the games is what keeps me motivated to keep it going. So. Along those lines, here's the Hall of Fame. Your name is etched here forever against in April 2026 as the Tukey Cup champion. And yeah, anyone who hasn't seen this before, just a reminder for anyone who has, we keep a Hall of Fame, which I'll link in the comments, which shows all the winners of the Tukey Cup tournaments so far, along with upcoming tournaments. So the next live tournament's going to be in August of this year, or thereabouts. Might be late July, early September. We'll see how scheduling works. And the next turn-based one should start in October. And then there's a write-up of every game. Each tournament only has 5 games. They're all really high level. I think it's well over 600 elo on average, which is really high level Terra Mystica, and they're all standard kind of competitive settings without any of the expansion factions. And so you can see a write-up of each game with a link to each game, and then I drop the video links for any videos we have here as well. So I will put the link to this video once it's up on YouTube here as well, so people can see that. And other than that, there is a Tukey Cup group on Board Game Arena, and you can, if you aren't already part of these communities and you want updates on when registration opens or who has won the most recent one, this is the best place to join. So you can just search for Tukey Cup on Board Game Arena, and yeah, I think that'll do it. So yeah, thanks again so much. It was great chatting with you, Thomas, and huge congratulations.